we have chapter 5, sexual self. Sexual self concept refers to the totality of oneself as a sexual being, no, including the positive and negative concepts and feelings with it. No. Humans are social creatures, are also sexual beings. No. Sex is one of the most natural yet beautiful concepts in terms of being fully human, if done in proper context. Our sexuality is an essential part of ourselves, no? And when we love our body and appreciate all the joy it can bring you, there is a sense of higher self-esteem or a boost of self-confidence or uh, butanta a completeness in or rather a feeling of being complete or whole kana. So our bodies house our sexuality. So diri ma-express, no? It is to the body essentially that sexuality finds its expression, no? And actually sexuality is our sexuality is a big part of our being, since mm, you cannot divorce anything. You cannot divorce all concepts of your being from the concept of sexuality. It's like it's like the hypothetical question. If you were born with the opposite na with the opposite sex, if you were born as putanta, if you were male and you were born a female, or if you're female you were born a male, if you were born as the opposite sex, what would have changed? And most likely the answer would be everything would have changed. Everything. Gikan sa imong upbringing, friends, environment, the way you talk, the way you behave, no, everything. So it's a big part of who we are, no. Uh, so being aware of just how we feel about our bodies is revealing, no. It's worth taking time to reflect on how you feel about your body, which encapsulates your sexuality, of course, every part of it. Think about what parts you like and dislike. Are there parts that you feel ashamed of? Reflect on all of it, as a lack of confidence can show up in subtle ways. No. Okay. So how do we define sex? No. As humans, we are meaning makers, which means we make meaning out of everything and we attach a lot of meaning, particularly to sex. Sex can mean power. Before tamu push through, right? So we attach meaning out of everything, out of the experiences that we have. We attach meaning to it because the idea here is whatever we do, we have to attach meaning to the objects that we do it with, so that the behavior itself will not be deemed useless. Okay, kung walay meaning, for example, you're going to school, you're taking up your course, and then what's the meaning behind all of your struggles? If you just say wala lang, lingaw-lingaw lang, the idea there is murag walay pulos, no, or kawang, or imuhang the pain that you're feeling, all the struggles that you have endured so far would basically become useless, no? If wala tayong meaning sa mga butang-butang. And so, in each of our experiences na tayo gitawag nga, we create meaning, meaning making, meaning which would imply that what we're acting upon as the moment would have a meaning. Dili siya walay pulos, dili siya walay silbi, no? So apil na diri ang ato ang sexuality. Okay? So here goes the next part. Sex can mean power, it can mean connection, physical pleasure, no? A declaration that you are now a couple, a declaration of love for the watong mga liberated, no? Although no, we have these meanings, these subjective meanings can be contested, no? But what I'm trying to say is that for each and every individual na ay lahi-lahi nga depende pod sa imong predisposition, depende sa imong outlook sa kinabuhi, lahi-lahi tag meaning that we create out of that concept, no? So it can be a bargaining point or a symbol of a contract, no, which is very liberated, no. In short, it can mean as many different things as there are people in the world. And so lahi-lahi ang mga tao sa kalibutan, and so lahi-lahi pud taog meaning gina-attach ani nga mga concepts. And so of course sex can mean completely different things to the two people in a relationship. The people rarely discuss these respective meanings because it would be awkward, or di na siya gina-discuss, but rather it's a subjective nga meaning that we place into the act or into the concept, regardless if dawato na siya sa atong partner. Now, di siya kinahanglan i-discuss because it can be shown. No, it can be shown towards the partner. No. Sex has no intrinsic meaning. Mao po na siya. Almost everyone wished it did. So, the desire to give sex meaning is an understandable, important enterprise. Honestly approach, it can be a valuable nga exercise into what do you think or how do you place meaning into something that's very contested, and something that's frowned upon by many people, viewed as hugaw, no, in some religions, no, disguised as the righteous desire to simply appreciate the meaning sex has, or the pursuit of restoring sex true meaning, no. Unsa kay true meaning sa sex, no? And in conservative view, of course, the true meaning of sex would be what the union of two people within the bounds of marriage, no. And here's the question, nga na jud ka magpakasal, no. In a different subject, no, under gender and society, there's a portion there which will be discussed, no, as to the importance of marriage, especially in the context of sex, ngano jud kaha. And one of the points given atong subject is that it's actually for practical reasons, no, it's actually what an assurance for the woman, no. So kana, no, so because you can't just, there's, according to one psychologist, there's no such thing as casual sex, no. You can't just have a casual nga intercourse and then after that wala na lang dayon, walay meaning, no, you cannot have that, you cannot have it that way, because lagi it's a big part of us. And so if you can say there is such thing as a casual sex, murag it's like saying that you're casually you're casually handing yourself out to others to be judged, to be scrutinized, to be utilized for whatever means they wanted to have, no, medyo lisod pod. No, it is a common source of conflict for both individuals and society. Sex only has a meaning insofar as we experience it. Its meaning is emergent and not objective. We discover the meaning of sex each time we are sexual, and the meaning that only resides in our experiences, because lahi-lahi siya. Now, for people who came under sexual abuse, lahi pod siguro ang ilahang di ba, ilahang definition or ilahang meaning that they put into this concept. Most people need sex to have meaning because the alternative is too frightening. No, being sexual in an existentialist or in an existential nga vacuum. No, that would mean behaving in ways, rather practicing sexual behaviors that are deemed meaningless. Wala lang, just for the sake of it, or just for what, floating in a vacuum wherein no let's go to the second part wherein sex without meaning would require participants to float freely in a sexual experience rather than being snugly anchored in a cognitive framework. What do we mean by this? It's like you use sex as a means to an end without even knowing what that end is, right? For most or for other people, they use sex, for example, as what as as a sensation just to feel something out of the void that they experience out of their life, which is a very sad place to be. Okay? This is scary because of our indoctrination that sex is bad. It's not actually bad. It's a neutral concept which was actually what corrupted by not society. It's corrupted by ill values. Kana, no? So, and what we had karon na dayon would be the idea that sex is inherently bad and so on and so forth. Now we learn that we need protection from our sexuality. It is non-linear, open-ended nature. It is a cacophony of impulses and feelings, and its transcendent possibility of taking us away from ourselves. No, so medyo deep siya in a way nga sa institutions daw nga gina-build karon sa societies is that you are shielded away from your sexuality, no. In this way we can relate it to a an emerging crisis sa atong, especially sa atong educational system, kanang ginatawag nila nga demasculine, i, i walaon nilang pagka masculine sa mga male nga students, no, wherein they want the male students to be robot, to be like rather ang standard sa educational system labi na sa mga bata would be the idea there is for a child to behave like what, no, and the standard that they pushed through would be ang standard sa babae. I'm not saying that boys should not behave. I'm just saying that uh, little boys will actually behave like boys good, and so they must have their own what they must have their own appreciation for it, no, and of course they have to be controlled, of course they have to be tamed, but mulagi the standard was set that if you behave like a good good girl, it would equate that the child is behaving as a good student, kana maglingkod lang, maghilom, no, and so on, no, and mawala ang ilahang zest out of experiencing the whole socialization nga process and so on, no, and so kana, no. In reality, sex describes a huge range of activities. This is half of dialectic. Many things can be sex because sex has whatever meaning we experience moment by moment. No, medyo Freudian siya, right? And sex has an infinite range of meanings because the scope of activities that can properly be called sexual is so vast. And of course, there is a notion that in sex there is no thing, there is nothing that can be considered normal because kay lagi everything is unique because individually we ascribe personal meanings out of it. Let us forgo the topic on sexual responsibility because it will be repeated later on a different presentation. Let's go to the determination of gender identity and adaptation of gender roles. Gender identity, thou, refers to the individual's subjective perception of being either male or female. It is also reflected in the degree of comfort the individual has in taking on a masculine or a feminine role in society. No? Whereas gender roles refers to a cultural specific defined set of expected attitudes and behavior considered normal or appropriate for a particular sex. That which is considered socially appropriate and typically associated with males is called masculine, that which is considered socially appropriate and typically associated with females is termed feminine. So that, and we have gender stereotype, belief concerning what personality characteristics are thought to be more common to one gender than the other. This extends to assumptions that how someone is likely to react in various situations based on his or her sex, or how someone is likely to behave. Generally, people adapt many of these stereotypical ideas in the process of establishing their own gender identity. Likewise, many gender role expectations reflect these stereotypical ideas as well. That explain na to. Stereotype would be this would be a pattern of behavior or a set of unwritten rules or norms wherein uh, a person nga gi-ascribe ani nga certain role would adhere to that, no, would adhere to that role by behaving as such, no. In many cases, little children, especially boys, will actually know how to behave like boys by looking at what isn't feminine, no. So inana, so dako kay ang role nga gina-play sa papa diri, labi na sa atong society wherein fathers would become the models, a standard model for how to behave sa ilang anak na lalaki, and fathers would also become the standard model of a masculine figure sa ilang anak na babae. And that being said, I'm not discounting the role of the mother sa balay. Dako kay gina playing a role ang mother sa balay. But kani nga ideas man gud nga dakog role ang mama sa balay, it's been stretched too far. Yes, it's true. Nothing is butang ta discounted out of it. But ang nahitabo man gud karon sa atong societies is that wala kayo na to gi-emphasize ang role sa papa, sa father, no, which is a very big part sa pagpadako sa bata, no. If ma-remember ninyo si Sigmund Freud, no, isa sa iyahang sa psychosexual stages wherein mo-arise ang Oedipus and Electra complex. It's that dako kay ang role sa stereotyping dira would be because the stereotype behaviors sa papa and sa mama would be crystallized dira sa bata. So inana. Anyway, we have social learning theory. There are multiple social influences that contribute to the establishment of gender identity and adopting of appropriate gender-specific social roles and behaviors. First, there would be ang parents. Parents typically provide a child with his or her earliest exposure to what it means to become male or female. Ang parents ang put sa virtues dira sa huna-huna og sa kasing-kasing sa bata, no? Sila ang produce sa standard stereotype sa behavior, no. Sila ang first exposure sa bata sa kalibutan, and so daw kayo nga role ang gina-play sa parents. But as the child grows older, natay gitawag nga peers, no. Once they are school age, the influence of peers become increasingly strong, and so kinahanglan, what do we mean by this is that stable dapat ang value system nga gi-provide sa parents dira sa bata, so that when they choose their peers, no, kay mas dako magud ang influence sa peers when they go out sa boundary sa balay. It's that mas stronger yung resistance sa bad influence, no, and kabalo siya mo discern between which is good and which is bad, no. And in terms of a stereotypical gender role and gender centered mga behavior, of course the child would know how to behave, no. The next would be school, no. As formal institutions devoted to the acculturation of the young, it is the job of the schools to teach children what behaviors are and are not appropriate. And then we have the media, no. Medyo if nabantayan ninyo ang restrictions, we have the parents, medyo strict, and then the peers, and then the school, and then here comes the media nga halos wala na filter system. Ang media na to karon wala na filter system. Remember that. So not all values nga gitudlo nga giportray dira sa atong sa internet would be good values. no, nauban dira nga ginakurap lang ang utok sa atong mga batanon. And these teenagers, wala na sila paki whether ilaha ginatanaw is sakto or sayop. It's just that if it appeals to their emotion, hala sakto na tanan, no, which is very wrong. No, so we have television, movies, and music have a great deal of influence on people of all ages, especially children and adolescents. Unfortunately, those producing this form of entertainment have no mandate to promote positive social change. Wala sa ilang values that to promote something like that, because para sa ilaha, it would still be profit, profit, and profit. Kwarta lang gyud na tanan. Everything there is entertainment. If tanaw nimo ni Vice Ganda is a prophet or a somebody who's very wise, no, I do not discount his ability to lift himself out of poverty, but I do have qualms uh, with the wisdom that he speaks, no, towards the young people, and most likely ang mga young people most likely mo to, no, so inana. One thing that's for sure is that isa lang gid unta na when we are placed in a pedestal, a rank or a position where we can influence others, we can actually use that position to influence others for good, which many of the people in the media industry are not actually adhering to. We're not only talking about television, we're also talking about the internet, the memes there. No, it's a good thing to have this sa ato, but malagi we have to know which asa ang boundary wherein it's already bad and it's already good virtue, no. And then we have religion. Pinaka-idealistic tanan, most religions have a patriarchal orientation, which is true and which is actually what works. No, there is an underlying theme of male supremacy. uh, Even the object of religion is generally male, a god, not a goddess. There is an explanation to this. The idea there is that it's it's represented as a patriarchal na supremacy, because the patriarchy, the 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 masculine figure actually represents order, no, while the female symbolic figures actually symbolizes what uh, it they symbolize life and they symbolize chaos as well. So it's actually a balance in chaos and order. And so even if its underlying theme is most likely of male supremacy, it does not mean that nga it's a bad institution or it's an evil institution. No. Masculine and feminine, certain activities and characteristics are often associated with one gender more than the other. Ito na na-discuss kanina, these conceptions are the basic of gender stereotypes and help to define the gender roles we adopt, and those that have come to be viewed as generally more appropriate to men are called masculine, and those appropriate to women are called feminine. Sexual self, the biology of self, no. So this brings us to the biological nga perspectives on the sexual self. At birth, one's sexuality is dependent on his physical features and genitals, which is true. No, most of the time, one's sexuality and gender orientation are generally the same. However, biological sex and gender orientation are two different things. No, biological sex is one's assignment upon birth and is dependent upon the physical features that the person has. On the other hand, gender is an identity that is learned and embraced by the individual. That being said, dako gyapon og role gina-play ang gitawag nga biological sex ani, no, because one of the contested ideas here would be at what point ang bata would have this identity, and at what point yan i-embrace, no. And so do we let him or her decide lang any identity nga makita niya without the guidance of the parents, kana po. And if walay parents mo guide, No, it goes beyond biological domains and is both personal and a social construct. So even if it's a social construct, it still has the biological nga constraints. No, so and if it's a social construct actually wala kay siya walay actually kuan gitawag gani dili siya objective in a way, no, on gender is a construct wherein dili siya objective, no. Gender is known to be the socially created roles, personality traits, and attitudes and behaviors and values attributed for men and women. This also includes the relative power and influence of each, indicating that gender is relational and refers not simply to women or men, but to the relationships between them. Thus, gender is anchored on societal beliefs and norms. Okay, so adolescence. When physiological changes are triggered within an individual's reproductive system, an adolescent is likely to experience sexual urges, become more sensitive to sexual stimuli, and feel sexual arousal. In men, it is natural for them to experience erection during an arousing moment. For women, vaginal lubrication is a likely response. If sexual arousal is satisfied to sexual intercourse, men would experience ejaculation while women would reach orgasm. The refractory period, or the period of rest after ejaculation, is likely to be longer in men, while in women can achieve multiple orgasms due to a shorter refractory period after intercourse. These bodily sensations are normal and typical in any sexual activity, since hormones produced within the body trigger these physiological responses. These sensations are part of the sexual response cycle, which include four phases. We have the excitement, the plateau, orgasm, and then the resolution. Completing the cycle would lead to sexual satisfaction. When adolescents feel sexual urges, they are likely to engage in sexual activities that would satisfy those urges. This is actually referring to the biological nga concepts. Okay? Just a disclaimer, these are all biological nga paradigm, meaning we're not discussing the morality of such. But we will be hitting that later on. No? But the thing explained here is that we're not discussing the morality in this particular topic karon. Okay, in the second part rather. No. However, the kind of sexual activities they engage in may vary. During adolescent stage, it is common occurrence to watch and read pornographic materials. No, again, we're not saying it's good. No, we're not saying it's bad. No, but the thing is, we're not discussing its moral nga mga implications. Engage in kissing and petting and perform masturbation. The act of stimulating one's genitalia for sexual pleasure. Medical professionals have cited the health benefits of masturbation, including stress relief, better sleep, improved self-esteem, and enhanced body image. However, masturbation is a better alternative to sexual intercourse, which may result to pregnancy and getting sexually transmitted diseases. Sexual identity and orientation. I think we have done that already. Okay, so let's jump to sexual self, the consequences of sexual choice. Sexual intercourse, also known as copulation, is the reproductive act wherein the male organ enters the female's reproductive tract. Now, teenage couples who engage in sexual intercourse are usually overwhelmed by the sensation they feel during the act. In addition, most teenagers who have sex with their partners often rationalize the act by claiming they love each other. No, but again, then again, we know that it's not actually safe to practice these things. No, and are ready to be committed to each other, which we know that they are not because they are still teenagers and mulagi nadala sa bugso na namin. No, but then again, we must remember that maturity must also be a factor in this type of things. No, however, if a woman is fertile during the time of intercourse, pregnancy is likely to occur and will last approximately 9 months before the birth of the child. Having a child entails a big responsibility and should not merely be a consequence of an impulsive moment. So here's the catch, here's the consequence. Playing with fire could hurt you, right? And so engaging in sexual activities outside of the bounds of marriage, dako kay siya og consequence, especially sa babae. Mo ginang mo siyang reason why ang babae mo ipanguyaban because dako kayo ang pressure or ang weight sa itawag nga decision making dira sa babae. The woman should be the one to decide kinsa iyahang spend her whole life with, no? And actually ang lalaki dapat na manguyab because manguyab na siya or mo pursue ang lalaki at the moment nga ready na siya mubuhi og pamilya. Ready na siya mo commit sa isa ka relasyon. Rather iyahang he has already found himself, no? Almost or nearing that stage ideally, no? And so it's it's a consequence on both sides, no? But bugat jud kayo dira sa babae. Early pregnancy. There are physical risks to having an early pregnancy that may impact on an adolescent's development, including risks of miscarriage, emotional stress. The idea there is dili sayon magpadako og bata, dili sayon mag even if you say that na ang parents sa babae dira to guide regardless, no, it's still a big amount of pressure, no, and health risks to both mother and infant. Further, early pregnancy may result to dropping out of school, alienation, and other similar disruptions. Pregnancy do not only affect females, males are also burdened by the responsibility of caring for a new child, his partner, and may also face the same problems. No, so that sexually transmitted diseases, no. Uh, Aside from pregnancy, another consequence of sexual intercourse is the risk of acquiring sexually transmitted diseases, especially if lahi mo partner. No, these sexually transmitted diseases will most of them can be treated, while most of them can be treated and cured, may have long-term consequences to one's health. STD is passed on by means of exchange of body fluids or genital contact. Among the common diseases are syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, genital warts. No? Symptoms of these sexually transmitted diseases includes a burning sensation during urination, warts and sores in the genitalia and mouth area, pus, abnormal and smelly discharge, genital irritation, and painful bowel movements. Treatment of these diseases may entail medication and in some cases surgery. However, there are cases when these diseases may affect one's reproductive functions and worse may result to death. Responsible sexual behavior entails the following. So respect for one's body. This would mean taking care of one's body and avoiding activities that undermine one's worth and respect. Secondly, maturity in thoughts and deeds. Now, this would refer to being objective, rational, and calm instead of being swept by one's emotion. Now, being guided by one's personal beliefs and core values. No, an adolescent should always be grounded by his personal principles and self-worth. Being future-oriented. Instead of focusing on the present, always weigh your actions now with the possible consequences in the future. Sexual pleasure might be overwhelming at the moment, but always focus on what will entail in the future. What your dreams are. No? If imong damgo mas bugat ba kaysa sa imong gibati nga pleasure as of the moment. So, that ends our topic.